Hi, I'm Dr. Davidkingboison. Welcome once again to the Certified Management Professional Training Platform. And as you have known, yours truly, Dr. Davidkingboison, is the facilitator for this program. So in this section, which is Module 7, we're going to talk about fundamentals of project management. And as a manager, it's important that you understand the rudiments of project management. And in this chapter, we are going to cover definition of project management, defining success in a project, developing a roadmap, that is the planning aspect of a project, project management tools and techniques, delivering results, that is executing the project, and keeping an eye, that is the monitoring and controlling. And at the end of the day, we look at also celebrating success, that is closing out of the project. So what is project management, or what is a project? Now, a project has some sort of characteristics. It should be an activity or an event that is limited with time, that has to be done within a specific period. And that activity should come at a certain cost. And that activity should be able to meet a certain quality standard. Overall, that activity should be within a defined scope. So if, for instance, you are undertaking this course, we can term it as a project. Why? Because it is an activity that is going to happen within a specified time of period. There is a cost attached to it, that is the budget for this, which you're going to pay. And it works within a certain scope, all right? Because you're doing, I think, 13 or 14 models. So model 1 to model 13 define what the scope. And it should be able to meet certain quality or standard. That is, an examination will be taken to test whether you've been able to understand what you learned. So we can say this is a project. Now, in the past few decades, organizations have discovered something incredible, principles that have been used to create enormous successes in large projects can be applied to projects of any size to create amazing success. And we are saying that due to that, many employees are expected to understand project management techniques and how to apply them to projects of any size. And as a manager, you have to follow project management practices and to effectively initiate, plan, execute, and then also monitor and control those projects as well. So it is important that you understand these rudiments so that you can best understand what is really happening within your environment. Now, most organizations have their own strategic plan where you have the vision, mission, objective, or strategy, and these strategies are now cascaded into projects. So these strategies are cascaded into projects, and it could be a large-scale project or a small-scale project. So when you get to the activity where you have the strategies, for instance, some organization might say that, okay, we want to embark on a rebranding exercise, okay? Rebrand, I mean, a particular product of theirs. That in itself, that thing, that is a strategy, is a project because they will give it a starting period in the strategic plan and an ending period. There'll be a cost assigned to it. And there is a certain timeline that we have to finish, and also a certain outcome, that is the quality that would want to achieve. And it will work within a certain scope. There will be responsible officers who will be assigned to such projects. So those strategies are now converted in most cases into projects, so that we would have to do it within a specified period of time, you should know that the vision of the organization is not forever. Maybe they want to achieve this in 5 years and they cascade it into what? Strategies, mission, objective strategies. And at that level, you have the project, the initiative, strategies project with timelines. So all these things, when we do them, it now dovetails into the objectives which we achieve. That also dovetails into the mission, and then we achieve the overall vision. And that is why project is very, very important. It's, in fact, at the heart of every organization. Okay. And we have known that projects that have not been managed well has become, cost to the organization because it didn't turn out well to achieve the specific objectives the organization wanted to achieve. So every organization develops a mission and vision. That's what I've indicated. And they define goals and strategies to realize these visions. So what normally happens is that these strategies, when they are developed, they are cascaded into what? Project. And we are expected as, in the organization to execute this project in a manner that achieve a particular objective that has been what? Outlined. But having this view in mind, having this understanding, effective managers understand the impact of their project and programs on the organization well-being and future, as I said, future existence. And if these projects are developed in alignment with the goals, then it becomes easy for the organization to realize that. Now, sometimes you see strategic misalignment. And what I mean by that is that the initiative, the projects that are executed are not targeted at achieving the objective. So then it becomes problematic. But you realize that if the projects that are being delivered are in sync with the organization's objective, then the mission and vision will be realized within the specified period of time. So what we are saying that if these projects are developed in alignment with the organization goals and objective in the balanced view and have been delivered successfully as per their plan, scope, time, and budget constraints, then as an effective manager, you have successfully supported the growth of your organization and have made it close to realize its vision, okay? Otherwise, the investment, time, and effort that has been put in it becomes something that will not yield anything good for the organization. So it is important that in managing projects, we ensure as managers that we are delivering the deliverables to achieve a certain objective, a certain goal, a certain mission, a certain vision of the organization. So you can see what this diagram, we have the programs, and the programs are the overall program you want to run that has other portfolios and then projects in them, okay? And business portfolios could be, you'll be handle a huge business, a constellation of projects, okay, that forms some sort of a portfolio. For instance, if you are managing all the project within the marketing department of an organization, or probably the supply chain department of organization, then you are managing a particular portfolio as it were. So a portfolio, as I said, will be a group of programs. It could be the similar programs that are together, or the similar project that you put together as what? Portfolio. And a program are a group of projects that are similar, that has been put together. So you might be managing a portfolio, you might be managing a program, okay? And in a project, you can also have sub-projects within it, and that's what the diagram is illustrating. And then you can also have other work. But it's important that this dovetails into, this matrix where the project will, or the program will lead to a new development of what? Product, a new product development. It could lead to a new application, okay? It could lead to, it could create some sort of competitive advantage for the organization. And then it will create also a new function for the organization. So you have this kind of a constellation of the projects that can be used as programs, the projects that can that are similar, that you can use as you can group as what? Programs. And then, so it is important to know that in the implementation of these projects, it will lead to these, achieving these metrics as you see them. You might get a new product developed. It will create that competitiveness for the organization. You get competitive advantage. Of course, that is the reason why the vision and mission are in place. And it will create new applications. Okay? It will create new functions because of these projects, which are going to be implemented, which are temporary in nature. We are saying that project aims to provide competitive advantage and support organizational growth with new ideas. It brings new ideas. It brings new innovations into the business. So as a project is a specific endeavor with specific start and finish date that is undertaken to meet particular goals and objectives. Okay, and projects are different from processes of every day. So operations, something that is routine is not a project. You wake up in the morning, you have to paste. It's not a project. An organization would always have to, as it were, deliver letters to other customers, or it's not a project. It is something that is routine. It's part of the business process. But we are saying that project is a specific endeavor, not something repetitive that has to be undertaken with a specific start and then end date. Projects are not permanent, and it's important that we understand that. And we are saying that to deliver successful projects, effective managers have to follow a project management approach. And this project management approach is a combined act and science of planning, organizing, and managing the resources of to get a particular project executed, and within a specified time period. The most known and generally accepted practice and approach is the one developed by the Project Management Institute, the PMI, which we know, and there are other ones like Prince2 and that are being also applied. Now, we are saying that all successful projects should follow the following characteristics. And the first is that it should be clear, it should have clear project goals. It should have clear project goals. It should have clear accountability. We should have defined timelines. When we say clear accountability, what we mean is that people should be held accountable, because we are going to assign roles and responsibilities, and people should be held accountable. Clear project goals simply means that the goals should not be ambiguous. It should not have two meanings. It should be clear and then direct and then specific. Okay, we should not, of course, when you're setting goals, you use the SMART model: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and it should have timelines. And that's what we are saying. It should be dedicated and highly performing team. You should have a dedicated and highly performing team, and should have defined methodology and governance. Governance, good governance in project management means that we are making sure that all the prescribed rules and regulations are adhered to, in the course of executing the project. And completion evaluated based on approved plans. That should be another characteristics of project, and it should be linked and aligned with business objectives, supported by the organization's management team. From the top, there should be that buy-in by top management. So these are the characteristics of a project. You could see this question somewhere I don't know, but it's very important that we know that. So project managers are in charge of leading. They lead managing and delivering what the project. So a project manager is the person responsible and accountable for accomplishing the stated project objective. And the key project management responsibility include creating clear and attainable project objectives, building the project requirements, and managing the triple constraints for the project. We're going to talk about the triple constraints. And the project manager is often required to perform that juggling act, balancing what the customer wants and the needs, and also looking at what the needs of the team are, and then providing the needed resources for the team to be able to execute what the as it were, the objective of the deliverables of the project. So we are saying that as an effective manager, you need to do project management. You need project management skills. As an effective manager, you need project management skills so that you will be able to execute, project. Even if you are not, as it were, the project manager, but you are a line manager, you need some of these skills to be able to understand how projects are executed. A successful project manager has that hodgepodge of skills, such as strong leadership, such as excellent negotiation skills, influence and persuasion, effective communication, and time management. You need this as one of the core skills to be able to manage the project effectively. So the PMI book, they have developed some processes that we would have to look at when we talk about project management. And they said the PMI has developed 5 processes groups that form the core structure of any project. And the process groups explain how the project or phase of the project is usually delivered. And the 5 processes groups are the initiation planning, take note of it, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing. Let me take it once more. That 5 process groups includes initiating planning, executing 2, monitoring 3, and controlling 4, and closing out. That is 5. Although there are these are illustrated as you see them as in that order. They are not, as it were, a continuous they are not seen as a continuous process. They can overlap. They are not in that sequential order. They can overlap. As for instance, monitoring of a project might not start from the end of the project. It might start from the initiation initiation stage, because you are monitoring the activities right from there to make sure that whatever plans are initiated are in sync with the project objective. So we have the project management process, as you can see, the initiation, we have the planning, we have the executing and closing. But you can see monitoring and controlling inside, illustrating that, in fact, it overlaps. It can go through all the process. That is what it should be, to make sure that at the planning stage, we do things right. At the execution stage, we do things right. Even initiating the project, coming out with the project charter and all that, we just need to be very careful that we do the right thing. We're able to develop a charter that really encapsulates what the organization will really want to achieve. And if once that is done and the monitoring is done to ensure that it aligns with the objective and the goals of the organization, then you can say you are in sync. Okay, so the PMI guide focus, or the PMB book, or let me put PM book, that is project management book, a guide focus on 10 knowledge areas that are crucial to project management. 10 knowledge areas. And the first one is the integration. we have the integration. We have the scope, we have the time, we have the cost, we have the quality, human resource, communication, risks, procurement, and stakeholders. So these are the 10 knowledge areas, okay? And integration is at the top, that like a top layer that integrates all the processes. And you have the time, the scope, time, risks, and then we have the time, HR management, and then procurement in there. Then you have cost, communication, and stakeholder. I think that there's a mistake here. There should be HR somewhere here. I'm sorry about that. Let me just change it. Okay, so that is it. So we have something we call the triple constraint in project management, and that has to do with time, cost, and then scope. But within that quadrant, you have what we call, within it, you have the risks, you have the resources, quality, and the project itself in the middle, as you see in figure 19, okay? While managing project, it is often that a project manager faces difficulty in managing an increased scope of work within the same budget or timelines. That then normally happens. The scope might vary, and then once that varies, affect other variables. And scope and time and cost are referred to as the triple constraints in the project world. We say triple constraint because they are critical, okay? The triple constraint in the project management world illustrates the balance of the project scope, time, and also the cost, okay? And that balance, that variation is something that normally happens every day when we execute projects. And we have seen this then in government projects more often than not, that the project is executed, they start, and all of a sudden the variation comes in, it extends the time, the cost is bloated up, and the scope is widened. And these things happen. And it's important that you know that when it comes, and why would we say it's constrained? It is because we are constrained with a certain cost, and that cost is limiting us to work within a certain scope, and that scope is also constraining us to work within a certain time frame, because we have people who are on the project. You have team members who have to be paid, consultants who have to be paid, and they are paid hourly rate or whatever. So you are very careful that if you're doing variation, these variations do not throw the project out of gear. Once that happens, then you have a challenge. So scope, time, and schedule forms the basis of the international and the traditional triple constraint. However, the PMI and other project management advocates contend that quality, risks, and resources are additional constraints that would also impact a project scope, time, and cost has changed, and which has led to the creation of a modified, triple constraint. So we have the traditional one, and then we have the modified one. You could see, and let me take this thing again so you would understand. It said scope, time, and schedule forms the basis. Scope, time, and schedule forms the basis for the traditional triple constraints. However, the PMI and other project management contend that quality, so quality was not in there, quality and risks and resources are additional constraints, and for which reason this diagram has changed. It used to be the three, but we have brought quality in, we have brought risks in, and then we have also, introduced resources as also part of what the triple constraint. It's a kind of a cascading thing that they've done, but they are all embodied within the triple constraint, but just a little bit of modification. So, for example, if the cost increases, it is logical to assume that the scope and time will also, increase. And we have talked about that. And we are saying that stakeholders are people or organizations who could impact or might be impacted by the project. So when we introduce the word stakeholders in project management, what we are referring to as those whose activities will impact the project. And we are saying that often sponsors will require the project managers, despite the increase in the scope of work, that they have to maintain the same schedule and deliver on time and all that. Those things happen. You say, hey, I'm not varying the cost, but you see, you have to, I'm not increasing the cost, but you have to deliver this thing within this time. And most often than not, this leads to failures in project because you are being pushed to the wall, yet resources are not allocated, time is constrained, and then it becomes an issue. So in a project continuum, a project manager deals with the various needs and wants by different groups. And very often, or often, these needs and wants are contradictory. Before managing such conflicting needs and wants, an effective project manager defines who his stakeholders are. And I have defined who the stakeholders are. They are those whose activity, those people who could impact or might be impacted by the project. Okay, so they are stakeholders. So for instance, the project sponsors are stakeholders. Those who are going to benefit from the project, if they are customers and it's a product that you are launching, those customers are going to be impacted. So it is very important that their interests are addressed so that we will be able to execute the project according to the deliverables that we've been given. So before managing such conflicts, one needs to look at these stakeholders holistically. And once you're able to do that, that is going to help in managing the project. Such a stake is the result of an impact stakeholders have on the project, and they will be impacted by the outcome of the project as well. I've cited that example. Effective project managers define stakeholders very early on the project. They define who the stakeholders are, and that is very, very important. And once they do that on the project and keeps managing them effectively during the project life cycle, it's able to help to be able to manage the some of the unexpected constraints or unexpected expectations from the stakeholder. A sponsor is someone or any organization that provides the financial funding and championing to the project. We have talked about two concepts, stakeholder and a sponsor. A sponsor is the person who gives the financial, let me say, clearance for you to, move on, start your project, because without finance, you will not be able to execute the project. And sponsor, he champions the project. It could be an internal or external to the organization. If the customer is paying for the project, then the customer is the sponsor. Then the customer is the sponsor. So let's look at defining success initiation when it comes to project. Defining success initiation when it comes to project. So the first process group of project management is the initiation. And this is where the project or phase of the project starts to take the shape that is expected to take. And the project manager works to build the jurisdiction for the project. That is the business case. And when we say business case, the justification for the project. Yeah, is able to identify the wants and needs of the project stakeholders and hence define what success would look like for the particular project. In other words, we should be able to know the end result. What success are we looking at? That is very important. A business case is a document that provides the justification I've talked about, the cost and the benefit analysis, the feasibility and assessment. All these things are done within the business case because you need to justify why we need to invest so much into the project. You need to do feasibility study. Feasibility study simply means that if we're embarking on the project, is the project doable? You understand? If we do our cost benefit analysis, does it make sense, business sense to invest into that? We just want to know. So you do the feasibility studies and then you do the cost benefit analysis. Now, when you're doing the cost benefit analysis, you might be doing the financial projections You want to see the profitability index. You want to see the internal rate of return, the present value, the future value. You want to see those things, okay? Present net value, you want to see them and see whether it makes sense to do the project. So every project must have a business case and a justification for its existence. Other than that, the project is not worth doing. Once a business case is established, the success and stakeholders' needs and wants have all been defined, then we can agree on to embark on the project. And a project manager will then formally document such agreement in a project charter, which is a summary of all these things I've talked about today. I mean, a background of the project, who the sponsor is, the justification of the project, the business case. You also want to know the milestones that you want to achieve, the cost, okay, the quality that we want to achieve, and then also the scope of the project in a more brief manner for the sponsor to look at it and then approve. Once the project charter is approved, then you are good to go. So a project charter formally announces the launch of a project. So proper and accurate identification and effective management of a project stakeholders is indispensable for delivering projects successfully. And when you identify stakeholders, then think outside the box and then ask other members of the team and the organization also to do. So you ask yourself, who else should be involved in this project? Who else? Sometimes it becomes something that you need to ponder over. Who else? If it turns out that you miss a stakeholder, which often than not it happens, it is not too late to bring that person back and apologize and say, we need to reconsider our decision to bring this guy on board. So at this point, you would receive valuable information on possible opportunities and potential issues, which could help fine-tune project objectives and help to fine-tune the scope, schedule, and budget. Once you have all these stakeholders' names, details, needs, wants, and interests, you need to document them in a register or a log, such as stakeholder register, which gives a constellation of all the project stakeholders. So you know that this is your project stakeholders you'll be dealing with. Either they will be impacted by the project or they will impact on the project. So when stakeholders begin to identify the goals of the project, encourage them to list any and all possibilities. Encourage them to do that. And however, the goals that you want them to list must be goals that must be SMART. And we've talked about SMART already in our initial: specific, measurable, actionable, reliable, and it should be time-bound. If the sky is not the limit, what would they want the project to accomplish? You may want to ask that. But see, this thing should be done carefully, because whatever we are doing is hinged on the objective of the organization. So even though stakeholder expectations may be sought in terms of their goals, but it should be within the defined environment or defined boundaries of what the objectives of the organization. We shouldn't go outside that. And stakeholders should decide which of their requirements are necessary for the project success, and that is the actual needs and wants are the nice to have, that is their wants. So we want to know that. Now that you have some idea of what you want the project to accomplish, you want to begin to also elicit high-level requirements, and requirements outline exactly what the project must do in order for it to be considered successful. Remember, good requirements are highly specific, and you should then be able to create deliverables. These define what people can expect to hold in their hands after the project is completed. So what are the deliverables? What are the deliverables, the handy things? So if we're doing something in relation to road construction, or constructing a road, maybe I'm in Ghana, so from the capital city to Ashanti region, the deliverable should be that at the end of the day, you should see a physical road. If it's a bitumen road, it's an asphalted road, you'll see that from Accra, the capital city. That will be the deliverable that you are looking at. So these deliverables will help you set clear expectations at the beginning of your project and remain and maintain a clear idea of what you are doing as you execute what the project. Okay. And you also want to look at what is actually in the project charter. You may want to look at the specific things that you would want to accomplish. And these things are very, very important. We're saying that at the initiation, the charter is like a launch document. Now you would want to expand it. And once you have an idea of who your stakeholders are and the project and the project will achieve, it is time to define other major elements, such as how long it will take to deliver the project now and how much will it cost. That is also very, very important. How much will the project cost? That is very, very important. So how much would it cost? And then also, we want to also know the scope of the project. We want to also know that. So at this point of the project, all your estimates are high level, figures, okay? And the chances are that your estimate would be 50% accurate. Further, in the planning stage of the project, you will be able to refine these estimates because the project charter is going to capture something, all right? That document. So if you're expanding it, you might have 50% accuracy because prices might have changed if you don't quote them in dollars, okay? It might change sporadically. So you would want to, as it were, be very careful that between the time you got the approval and the time you're starting the initiation, any price hikes are also considered. And then so that you have realistic figures. Then you identify high-level set of assumptions, constraints, dependencies, and also risks. And you also would want to define the high-level requirement for resources you need to accomplish the project, such as people, equipment. You may want to also look at that and materials, okay? So let's look at this. You might ordinarily see in a project charter, on the high level, you'll see the project name, the project manager's name, the sponsor name, goals and objective, project due date, stakeholders, high level in scope and out of scope statement, and requirement and deliverable. These can change, depending on the what kind of approach you are using. Assuming we are using a PMI, and then this is what we are looking at: high level budget, milestone descriptions and dates, and then possible risks and opportunities, communication plans, and a page for sign off by the important party. So primarily, the project charter will have something like that. So after doing the initiation, getting the project charter into place, okay, and then making sure that things have been put together, then the next thing you have to do is you have to do the actual planning. And we're saying that planning focuses in creating specific plans to guide your project team members in delivering as per the defined goals and the charter, which we talked about at the initiation stage. In the planning stage, you are expected to create the following key plans and documents. You need the scope baseline, you need the schedule baseline, you need the cost baseline. And the baseline, what we are referring, baseline has to do with the cutoff. You understand? The baseline. What are we looking at in terms of the base? So it said which comprises of the approved scope statement, the work breakdown structure, and the work breakdown or dictionary. WBS is work breakdown, okay? So the scope baseline comprises of the approved scope, okay, statement, the one approved, that is the baseline, the work breakdown structure, and the work breakdown dictionary. The schedule based baseline, which comprises of the approved project schedule, the approved project what schedule, and the cost baseline, which comprises of the approved cost for your project. On top of it, management reserve is added to cover for any unplanned risks. The overall figure establishes what the project budget. So in this wise, we are saying that you might have the cost baseline, but on top of it, management reserve is also added, just in case, so that we can plan for any unplanned risks. So developing the roadmap for planning, that is an extension of the initiation document, that's the project charter at the initiating stage. What you are doing here is that you are looking at the scope baseline, schedule baseline, cost baseline, and that gives you the project map as illustrated in figure 12. Okay, so the first step is to agree on the scope of the project based on the initial requirement. In any project, stakeholders will list down both the actual needs and their nice to have wishes. And since projects usually have limited resources, as a project manager, you have to trade off between the resources as a project, trade off between the requirements and filter them, come up with the actual scope. And like I said, trading off, make sure you do not, wade into areas that will divert the main objective of the project, which is to meet a specific objective of the organization that will meet a certain, mission that will dovetail into a certain vision. So for instance, your stakeholder might list down 550 requirements for a new online booking system. However, due to limitation on budget, time, and resources, you negotiate with them, rank their requirement to eventually conclude only 238. That's just an example requirement that will be implemented for the current project. So we are saying that at this critical juncture, it is important to document the scope in the scope statement, because there have been variations, and that variation you have agreed with them, and that could go. Okay, and that should be approved also by the project sponsor. The project charter has been approved by the project sponsor. We've given a certain requirement, a certain cost, a certain timeline. So if you engage your stakeholders and it becomes relevant that there are some sort of variation, these variations might have to go to the project sponsor for approval, but also should be within the context of the objective of the organization. It is significantly important to engage all stakeholders in developing a scope, work breakdown structure, and tax list to get their buy-in and to ensure that the tax do reflect exactly the work that has been done. That is very, very important. So after defining and agreeing on the scope, it is time to add further details on the defined scope by creating the work breakdown structures. We have talked about it. Now, what is it? It's a graphical breakdown of all and only the work to be done in the project. That's what it is. And it is created collectively with the stakeholders, and should not be done by the project manager alone. That will be, and this ensures that the correct details have been provided and included in the WBS, and also team buy-in is what's secured. And the WBS can be built in 5 easy steps. The first one is this: identify the purpose of the project and write the title at the top. 2, establish the major segment of the project. For instance, website designing, requirement gathering, training, etc. 3, break down the segment of the work into sub-components. For instance, you can break the training category into administrators training, reservation clerk training, and user end training in that order. Then you continue to break down the work until you reach a level where you will assign and monitor the project work. And then review the WBS with the stakeholders and project team to ensure that all these are covered. And then the last one is to create a dictionary to support the graphical WBS. A dictionary would explain the categories in the WBS and add identification numbers, estimates for time, cost, and resources. So work breakdown structure is very, very key. That is another level hierarchy of cascading of the activities of the project. And here, even when we are developing a dictionary for it, we are not doing in terms of just words, but what we are doing that we are giving identification numbers and then estimate for time, cost, and also resources. So this is an example of work breakdown structure. If you can see at the top where you have the WBS, requirement gathering, website designing, training, you come functional requirements, non-functional requirement, image selection, theme development. Under training, you have administrative training, you have reservation click training, and end user training. So a kind of a cascading of the process. And that is illustrated in figure 21, as you can see, the WBS. So now the next step would be to create a project schedule which defines the start and the end date of the project. A project schedule lists all activities and tasks, milestones, required resources, and duration. How detailed the task list become is up to the project manager, and it's suggested to write the task list in a way that you and your team will accomplish it. And again, it is important to engage all stakeholders in doing this activity to get their buy-in, as we said, initially. When building your schedule, never guess time. Instead, gather the most reliable information possible and use scientific formula to get the best estimate. The schedule is what each person is supposed to execute, like a kind of a task that you are assigning to them. So the better you estimate, the more reliable your plan will be. First, you start by breaking down or decomposing the last category in your approved work breakdown structure into actual activities. Okay, so that's what you do. So for instance, in your work breakdown structure, like end user training, how do you break that into activities? Okay, so the training, what will be the start time? What will be would there be a break? In that training, will there be lunch? Okay, in that training, are we going to provide some sort of resources? Okay, like books and other things. Are we going to pay the facilitator? So you are drilling this thing down to the lowest point to be able to know which activities will take that. And this will form your activity list. Review the list with your team to ensure it covers all activities. Secondly, you would have to identify the relationship between these activities and their sequence of occurrence. And for instance, if you cannot train users on the new booking system unless the system is developed and made available for them to try, then that should come first, the sequencing of the activities. And most times this is done with a software. If you have the Microsoft Project Management software, it can help you do that. Okay, some of these sequences will be mandatory due to the nature of the job itself, or optional, and you might decide not to launch the new reservation system until those ones are done. So always know the available resources first before making commitment on tax duration. Make sure resources are available before making commitment on tax duration. That is very, very important. Okay, so for resources, we need these resources to be able to execute the project. All right, so we are saying that now that the tax list is completed, you are finished with the tax, and tax dependencies are also clear. It is time to decide what resources will be used to accomplish the task. And in project management, resources means people, materials, it means equipment, etc. How detailed you get with your resource list is up to you, just as I said in the other one. And how for people, resources, make sure you include all people who are going to be spending their time on the project. Make sure you include all of them. Now, here are some of the tips that to make your schedule efficient, accurate, and useful. So let's look at this. It said, look for places where resources can perform activities simultaneously. However, be aware of the risks. Look for places where resources can perform activities simultaneously, just to reduce the cost, but you have to be aware of the risk. Indicate milestones in your schedule. Indicate milestones are identifiable points in projects that require no resources or time. They are simply a key point in time. They can also help you group your project into phases. Take note of the definition of milestone. Make sure to indicate lag. The lag in the project management means that you are flexible, you lead some sort of time, okay, and lead time in your task so that you don't constrain. If the training is going to take maybe 5 hours, I mean, you have lag of 2 hours so that you say 7 hours. That lag is going to help you if there are any issues that might come up and you might not, as it were, be able to handle because you've given that lag also in there. So we are saying that make sure you include lag. Lag refers to the waiting period or the delay between tasks, just as I have defined. Lead refers to a waiting period or delay between tasks or doing them in parallel. That is what lead is. That's what lag is. So lag is what refers to the waiting period or delay between tasks. Lead refers to a waiting period or delay between tasks or doing them in parallel. Okay, so lead introduce doing something in parallel. You add lag and lead to make your schedule more realistic and effective, so that if there are any slacks, any delays, it could be accommodated. For team projects, make a large copy of schedule and post it where everyone can see. For team project, make sure a copy of the schedule and post it where everyone can see. It is preferred to use graphic format in addition to a list format. Okay, and these are some of the tips to make your schedule efficient, accurate, and also useful. Once resources have been identified and added to your task list, you would now know the duration of the task. Initially, you might have some thoughts about that training will take 2 weeks, but since you have realized that 2 trainers are available, then the training task might have to take 1 week because now you have more resources. Always know how available resources first. Know the availability of what resources first before making commitments to the duration, which I said earlier. At this point, you have all then components ready to come with the project schedule. By adding all the task duration together, while considering the dependency and resources assignment, you will know the ultimate start and the date of your project. Project managers usually turn to software application to help them. I've talked about that. There's a lot of softwares in town about this, and you can have access, you can buy them and then use them. It makes life very easy. In fact, it incorporates all the things that we've talked about. The last element of your planning process is to get the cost baseline and the project budget. And at this point, you estimate costs for all resources and tasks. Make sure to include salary information for everyone, even project team members, and to include line item cost of information for material resources. Once you have your estimated cost throughout thoroughly established, then as an effective manager, you need to include what we call contingencies, okay, to reflect identifiable risks. So the summation of the two will create the cost baseline for review. Your manager, based on the experience, will also add some additional costs to cover the unidentifiable costs. And this is called project reserve. The sum of the cost baseline and the management reserve is called the project budget. The sum of the cost baseline and the management reserve is called the project budget. So that's what it is. And FIC 22 identifies. So this is your cost estimates plus contingencies plus project reserve is called project budget. The question could be posed that project budgets consist of the following: cost estimates, contingency, management reserve. Okay, then they add other things, or they might say that this one is not, one of the items are not part of the project budget. So, or which of the following is not part of the project budget? And as you know, if you know these ones, you should be able to deal with this. So still at the planning stage, we are saying that now you have defined the major roadmap and plans for your project. It is important to consider two major elements: planning risks and communicating in your project. As a project manager, create risk management plan and communication plan to ensure risks and communication are managed effectively in your project. So a risk plan and a communication plan. So there are 4 common approaches when you would want to look at risks. Okay, we say mitigation, avoidance, transfer, and acceptance. So you can deal with risk by mitigating it. So find a way to reduce the probability and the impact of the risk. That's mitigation. Avoid risk. Take steps to avoid the risk entirely. Don't go into it. Okay. And the third one, transfer. You can transfer this risk to someone outside the project, like an insurance company or something, and accept risks. If the risk impact is not that much, you can decide to accept the risk and then allow it to happen, because you know the impact will not be devastating. So accept the risks could happen and choose not to act. This is the best approach for risks with low probability. All right. So we would want to, so during the project, stakeholders and team members should be encouraged to bring up new risks to the project manager, who can then update the plan and communicate it to the rest of the team. If risks are not identified, checked, and analyzed, then your core 3 baseline would be most likely unrealistic. Okay, it will not be realistic because the risks will happen. So a simple risk management plan is what you have. The risks, the date identify, risks raised by who, probability rating 1 to 10. How is what is it going to happen? 1 to 10. If it is around 9, then it's likely to happen. If it's 1, then it's not probable to happen. The impact rating, that is the impact of the risks, and the response option. When it happens, what will be the response option? So this is a simple risk management plan that we can deploy. The second plan you have to create is the communication plan, which we have talked about. So the risks, the first one is the risks. The second one is the communication. And we are saying that a basic template should include a what, who, where, when, why, and how for each communication item. And a simple communication plan is what you have here. So we say what, status of meeting, who, the project team, where Wild Road, or maybe Ghana, or Accra, when, every Monday meeting, why, to report issues encountered last week and upcoming. This is the communication plan. And this is extremely important because you need to update the stakeholders actually what is happening. So you need this plan to be able to help them. And if you use this template, it's really going to help you. How? How are you going to communicate it? In person or through a certain feed, social media or whatever? An outcome, meeting minutes, documents shared by email to all participants. That is the outcome, okay? At the end of the day, when you have done all this, we are saying that if you have this plan, then you have a very reliable communication plan. Most of the times we don't do this. And you are now realizing that project management is a serious business. So as you can see, the communication plan can be formal or informal, highly detailed and broadly framed based on the needs of the project. Like the schedule, the plan should be maintained, updated, and shared throughout the project. And it is very critical that while developing all these plans, the document to keep the managers and manage stakeholders' expectation effectively, each stakeholder and project team member will have different expectation. You should know that. And as the project manager, you need to manage all of them. Unmanaged expectation will cause conflict. It will cause conflict and can cause the project to fail. So periodically reviewing project documents and plans is important. You might need to regularly check the following. First of all, does everyone involved have the same understanding of the project? Clarify responsibility as assigned. Clarify outcome and time frame. Clarify the requirement and then budget. Understand the project and the schedule linkages. We are saying that intermittently these things have to be done and communicate to everyone who is what relevant. So proper and accurate identification and effective management of project stakeholders is indispensable for delivering project successfully. Indispensable for delivering project successfully. Okay, so now we want to look at the project management tools and techniques. Project management tools and managing stakeholders is one of the key challenges to project managers. Stakeholders usually have conflicting and often contradictory needs. And as a project manager, you need a mechanism to deal with them effectively. Stakeholders analysis metrics is a technique that helps you classify stakeholders in accordance to their level of power and impact. So power impact analysis. With 4 quadrants, you assess stakeholder power and impact level and put each name in the quadrant. Eventually, you would need to manage closely stakeholders who have high power and high impact, while you manage with little effort stakeholders who have low power and low income. You can use a matrix of power versus interest also, or power versus involvement as other options emerge. You can use that one as well. So you have power here, and then you have what? The impact. So if you look at where Ahmed is, 2, Ahmed has high power but low impact. High power but low impact. Fred has low power, low impact. So maybe I want to not to pay too much attention, even though relevant. But hey, you have here Kathy, who has a high power and high impact. But you have this lady who has high power, Leo, this gentleman that has high power, high here, but also high what? Impact. Okay, high impact here. So no, sorry, he has high power here, and then also low impact here, and then high power, impact. High impact and low power here. So that is Leo. Leo has high impact and then low power. Okay. But when you come to this guy instead, Ed, that is Fred. Fred rather has also here a low impact here. And then when you come to power, also have low power. Okay. So it is only McCarthy here that has high power and high impact. Okay. But Leo has low impact and a low power and then high what? Impact. So that's how this thing works out. Ahmed has high power and what? Low impact. So how do you navigate through this and ensure that these guys are managed according to these metrics? And it's very, and we are saying that if you watch here, for Ahmed, who has high power and low impact, say keep satisfied. For Kati, who has high power and high impact, they said manage closely. And for Fred, low is a monitor with minimal what? Effort. And the low high here is a monitor with minimal monitor with what? Minimum what? Effort. You understand? But they keep satisfied and manage closely are those who have high power and low impact, and then those who have high power and high impact. Even those who have high impact and low power, you have to monitor with minimal what? Effort. So that is fig 24. So we are saying that this is kind of the matrix, okay? The matrix. And this guy says here that an RACI mystic is an excellent way to outline who is responsible for what during the project management. And the RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. That is about that. So now we go to execution. Having done the initiation, having done the planning, having gone through the work breakdown structures, having done the course, the resources, the risk plan, the communication plan, having done all, this is actually where we move into action. Actually, we go on the field to do the implementation. And we say that now when you have planned very well and baselines established and approved, it is time to get to work and put things into action. Your team members start working in accordance to the activity listed and in the schedule, and working in accordance to their activity list and schedule. You would proceed and make any necessary purchases and procurement at this stage. If you have to buy some raw materials, you have to do it. You might also engage your quality assurance team to ensure quality and implement the quality plans. You might also engage your consultants. During this stage also, you communicate the report progress update as and when you execute something. And you remember that we had a communication plan that we were dealing with. And as a project manager, it is your responsibility to monitor all parts of the project to make sure that they are continuing as planned. And if issues arise, it is your responsibility to resolve them or to escalate them to someone who can resolve them. In executing, you expect to do the following. Take note of it. Execute activities and tasks as per the schedule. 1. 2. Recruit and develop human resources. 3. Ensure quality is adhered to as per the plan. 4. Communicate information, status report, deliverable update, and other project achievements and issue. And then the last one, actively and effectively manage stakeholders. So in executing, you have to do this. And as it is often said, nothing goes as per the plan. Therefore, you need to expect some sort of changes. After all, planning is very likely that one element of the triple constraint will change. That is the cost, the scope, and then the time. It might change, okay? It might change. That triple constraint might change. So it is very likely that they might change. Perhaps the team member has left the organization. Perhaps something has happened. Maybe some act of God. Something has happened that has changed the face of the project. The budget has to be cut. A new technical requirement has to be met. And things can change. With all the risks and whatever we have put in, things can sporadically change. And when approached with scope changes, we need not what? Panic, right? There are 3 established methods that you can use to decide how to alter the course of a project. And the first one is crashing. The second one is fast tracking. And the third one is descoping. So if you see some of these things happening, then what you have to do is then employ these 3 strategies. The first one is crashing. Reduce the schedule without changing the budget, or vice versa, depending on the project needs. This can be done by using cheaper resources or by re-evaluating the time estimate, okay? That is the crashing of the project. You reduce the schedule without changing what? The budget. The other one is fast tracking. Can be done with the schedule alone, and looks at the schedule to see whether tasks can be completed concurrently. So if you build some sort of leads and lags in your destiny, now you can revisit those ones because you planned very well. There are some delays that were expected. So can we reorganize that? And where lags or leads can be reduced or eliminated entirely, as I said. And this scoping, remove items from the project scope to free up time and money. You can remove some items and make sure that they are items that are not too critical. and you can just remove them. And make sure that you truly look at the big picture and include short and long-term benefits and consequences in your decision-making process. Once you have performed careful analysis, gathered documentation to back your decision, clear decision with the appropriate stakeholders, change the project plan accordingly and seek approval from the new baseline and communicate the plan change to everyone involved. That is very, very important. So keeping an eye, when you are done with everything, now you have executed, but I need to indicate that this monitoring starts from the initiation stage, all right? The first stage of the project management process group is monitoring and controlling. Effective project managers do not leave their project without proper monitoring and controlling measures. And regular mandatory status meeting for all team members are required. These meetings will give the team members the chance to connect, discuss, and then raise issues that they had during the project. It will also give the opportunity to coach the team members and make sure that you are on top of everyone, what everyone is doing. And status meeting should be tied in with status report, and it's also recommended that both items be completed regularly based on the communication plan. And also remember that meetings and reports can be brief or detailed. It all depends on what level of control you need, how big the project is, and what the stakeholder communication requirement is. Typically, status report should contain the following, and this status report is part of the monitoring of the project: the team member name, status report date, task plan for the previous week, task completed in the previous week, task plan for the following week, and issues and risks identified. Okay, you'll see this in. And change management is also another way of controlling your project. And this process ensures that any change, whether it is to the objectives, requirement, tasks, or design of the particular component, must be approved by the project manager, sponsor, or some executive authority for execution. At the beginning of the project, all stakeholders must agree not to make any changes to the plan or to the design of its components, and instead to follow the change management process. If it goes through that, it is easy for approvals to be given, and there's visibility through the entire chain of the project. Then when a change is required, a change management form is completed and submitted to the project manager. The change is reviewed, analyzed, and the decision is made. In small projects, the review process may be done by project manager. For large projects, the project team or even separate task force, typically called the change control board, CCB, is involved. And only once the change is approved, then plans are updated and the change is delivered. So this is an example of a change request form. Change request number, okay, requested by who, details, and then rejected or approved. Here you have the change request on which date, change submitted by who, tax or affected by who. Just a simple, and these things can be implemented wherever we find ourselves. So another key aspect of your monitoring and controlling is monitoring risks. Risks could be threats or opportunities that would increase the chance of success or failure of the project. Make sure that the risk management plan developed in the planning stage does not stay on the shelf. Make sure we put it into practice. Instead, you have to use it to monitor and manage the risks, to make sure that risks do not ruin the project. You need to be proactive by meeting with the stakeholders to ensure that the risk assessment is accurate and that your action plan and response strategies are also valid. Also, you need to keep an eye on your assumptions. You made certain assumptions and make sure that they continue to hold true and identify what could happen if those assumptions are fulfilled. So those assumptions, you make assumptions, make sure that they are assumptions that are real assumptions that are quantifiable, assumptions that make sense. So whatever there's a change to a project, as we said, make sure that you truly look at the bigger picture and include short and long-term benefits and consequences in the decision-making process. The final one is the closing out. The final one is the closing out. Finally, you have reached the point where all tasks in your project plan have been checked off and completely successfully delivered. Before you consider the project complete, however, there are few more things that you need to do. First of all, as your project winds down, you need to find team morale dropping or anxiety increasing. Closure of a project can be difficult, particularly if the project has been long or difficult, or if team members will not be working together afterwards. That can be serious, because you count people maybe for 6 months and all of a sudden we are closing the project. To help team members get through this tough time and make sure that they know what they will be working on after the project, make sure they know what they will be working on after the project, and make sure they know who will be reviewing their performance, and encourage them to come to you with questions. After the project, take time to celebrate the things that the project did well and recognize each person for their contribution and accomplishment. Team celebration, of course, are also very important. And as part of the closeout, it is a great idea to have a team party. Wow. Have a team party. An excellent idea is to have a closeout meeting with the stakeholder and provide an opportunity for review of the accomplishment and the challenges that these guys have encountered. Okay. So what we are saying is that no project will go perfectly. There will always be risks you did not anticipate, tasks that run longer than they should have, project team members that did not perform as expected. If it can happen, it probably will. Therefore, meeting with stakeholders to identify these issues, learn from them, and document them is a very valuable exercise that will help to clear the project. In other words, to close the project. Conducting lesson learned section have tremendous benefits. In fact, in one of the Prince 2 project management, framework, there is a documented aspect that talks about lesson learned. That forms the basis of the next project, and that is very important. So we are saying that conducting lesson learned sections have tremendous benefits, such as it ensures everyone is aware of the challenges encountered and what was done to resolve them. It's also sometimes it's learned from a mistake or failed endeavor, then the effort put into the task is not entirely wasted. Participants can apply these lessons learned to future projects and be more successful. And another important part of the project closeout is formal customer acceptance. This is where stakeholders meet with the client or sponsor to determine whether or not the project did what it set out to do as per the project charter and the baseline. This acceptance process tries to answer the following question: were all needs met? Were all wants met? Were all SMART goals achieved? Were all deliverables met? Are the stakeholders happy with the results? How much we deviated from the approved baseline? These things will have to be asked. These questions would have to be asked. And once answers to these questions have been collected, trust me, and the project is due for closure, then the project manager documents officially the project closure in acceptance form. The client or sponsor usually signs off and accepts the form and hence the project. If there are discrepancies in the deliverables and the customer disagrees with the closure, then the project manager has to correctively, act till the customer is fully satisfied. And then the project is brought back to track and in alignment with approved baseline. Team celebration, as I said, are very important aspect of closures. All documents, both electronic and paper, should be stored and archived, such as the project charter, very important, scope, workday breakdown, structure, schedule baseline risks, and communication plan, change request, team member evaluation, lesson learned, meeting minutes, and status report. Additionally, the project manager has to pass on appropriate project information such as training, documentation, blueprints, and troubleshooting information to the appropriate people. Also, all payments should have been made and paperwork submitted. Wow. So this is very interesting. And this brings us to the end of this model, which is model 7. Project management, remember, is at the heart of organizations, vision and mission. Actually, they become the wheels that drives organizations' mission. It is these projects that translate to product and services that are done to meet customer expectation. It is this project that gives us the competitive advantage. And as a manager, it is important that you understand these fundamentals so that you can help achieve the overall objective of the organization, so that the organization can realize its vision. Thank you so much. And we meet in the next model.